Republicans have figured out that if you want political power in America, you have to talk about the working class. Recently, Vice President JD Vance said that the reason that they are increasing deportations at such an aggressive rate is to raise the wages of the average American. The only problem there is that is verifiably false, but it sounds like economic populism. And it signals what the shift looks like in American politics on both political parties. Let's first watch the clip on JD Vance explaining his new justification for increased aggressive deportations.
Lady.
So on immigration, can you describe how it's going to look different now after the Minnesota surge? And is Tom Homan now leading this immigration push to try to remove more people who are here illegally?
Well, Tom Homan's always been a critical part of what we've done at the border. And when it comes to immigration enforcement, what we've consistently said is that we want to deport violent criminals, people who came in under the Biden administration illegally, and get them out of our country so that Americans' wages can go up, so that American streets can be safer. Tom's been an important part of that. But of course, Kristi Noem's been an important part of that. Our DHS Secretary, Stephen Miller, at the White House has been an important part of that.
So, two open lies in that claim already. The first one, that they're deporting violent criminals, which we know is verifiably false. And the second, that these deportations somehow increase the economic mobility of the average American. We'll break down both of those, but let's start with the violent criminal point. In December 2025, ICE detained 30,000 people. And of those 30,000 detainees, only 0.05% had murder convictions and 0.2% had sexual assault convictions. Many were held for minor offenses like traffic violations or civil violations regarding to immigration status. That is not violent criminals being detained from this country. And they always try to use that justification because they know how horrible it sounds even to the strongest ICE supporter in the country. How can you justify detaining a single mother of three kids who are citizens here? How can you justify deporting somebody who's been a community member or an economic contributor for the past 10 years? They've just been waiting on their immigration status or they're seeking asylum. Nobody can justify that unless you believe in like some sort of blood right, like blood right guarantee of citizenship in this country, which mostly are just white nationalists. That's the only justification you can have to be excited about people being detained with zero violent criminal record. In fact, ICE detained more people for improper entry than any other crime this month or in 2025. So this isn't a violent criminal crackdown. It's a mass labor market enforcement policy, whether they say it or not. And that matters because the wage argument depends on a very specific economic assumption. A majority of the economic research shows that mass deportation does not meaningfully raise wages overall. The Penn Wharton budget model found that wages for low skilled authorized workers might rise about 1.2% in the near term, but those gains fade and even reverse over time. You're decreasing your labor pool. By every metric of economic growth, you need to have more workers in this country. And the more that you remove those, especially at a rapid rate in the pace that the Trump administration is doing, that does more to disrupt the economy than it does to help it. High skilled workers' wages actually fall, and the economy shrinks because, again, there's less capital investment in a fewer worker economy. People's wages are not determined by immigrants in the country, it's determined by weak unions, corporate concentration, misclassification, and contact labor. Employer monopsony power, which means there's a control over the buying power of labor, and outsourcing of manufacturing jobs. All of these have led to decreases and stagnation of wages since the 1980s. It's not been an immigration problem. It has been a wealth and oligarchy problem. Trump's second term has been the fastest pace of deportation in modern American history. So, by their own logic, we should have the best wages ever in this country. But many reports are showing that middle class Americans are forced to sell their plasma as Trump's affordability crisis spirals. This is an article from Daily Beast. Jill Chamberlain from Phoenix, Arizona said, "I'm angry that I'm working this much, that I'm educated, that I'm articulate, that I have marketable skills, and that I'm being reduced to selling my plasma." After being laid off from her job overseeing the finances of a local business in 2024, she went from making $87,000 a year to $16 an hour. "I was ashamed at first, but now I'm angry. This is not how things are supposed to be," she said. "We've always heard the middle class is disappearing," she said, "but really, really quickly, the rich are getting richer and the rest of us are shrinking." In Fresno, California, Aaron Ragnetti began selling plasma to cover debt and bills. "Because the economy is what it is right now, everything's just so much more expensive," she said. I realized if we're going to make ends meet, I've got to find a way to make more money. This article from KOAT says coffee steak prices went up in January. What got cheaper? Calculate your grocery bill. It includes this tool that you can use to compare the prices of groceries in January 2026 versus the previous year. And in a majority of the cases, the price increase is at least 12%. The latest Bureau of Labor Statistics report shows consumer prices fell at a 2.4% annual pace in January. This is a decrease from the 2.7% reported in December 2025. Grocery prices rose 0.2% in January to 2.9% year over year. The Consumer Price Index is a measure of the average price of a basket of goods and services in the United States. How much things cost and how quickly prices rise affect how far a dollar will stretch. And then you can use this tool yourself if you go to this article, and it'll show you that comparative price from January to that of last year. So, across every metric, it's getting harder for the average American to make ends meet. But JD Vance is strategically using this economic populist language because they want to generate more support for the administration's agenda. Even if every metric shows that that doesn't help, they want to somehow capitalize on economic populism. They know that it is successful in rural Texas and urban New York. Across the country, workers will coalesce under administrations or under political movements that they view as helpful to them economically because everybody is struggling. But the real economic effects of deportations hurts the economy. Farmers lose harvests when large workers disappear. Construction slows down. Restaurants cut hours from their workers. There's less bargaining power and collective ability to negotiate higher wages. Supply chains tighten, prices go up. One study even estimated that agricultural raids reduce the workforce by 20 to 40% and increase food prices 5 to 12%. That is the opposite of helping working class families. Because for most Americans, the real pressure isn't just wages alone, it's cost of living. And deportation doesn't lower rent, it doesn't lower healthcare, and it doesn't lower grocery prices. This is how Democrats can actually fight back against this type of political rhetoric. You can be a genuine advocate for working class people. That's by advocating for policies that do help raise people's economic mobility. Stronger unions allow people to negotiate their own wages with their coworkers, with their peers, against those that are trying to cut their wages at all costs. We need more antitrust enforcement. We've seen so many of the largest conglomerate merges under the Trump administration, and most of the time it's for political gain for Donald Trump. It's through these narcissistic projects that he approves these mergers. Higher minimum wages, we can have universal health care, childcare, housing supply increases, and corporate price controls or regulation. These are all ways that you genuinely help working class people, not through deportation or just talking about things in a economic populist rhetoric. The political lane for working class populism is wide open in this country. And if Democrats don't fill that gap with actual economic policy, it will be filled by somebody with a scapegoat. Republicans will sell cultural issues as economic ones, and suddenly they're a working class advocate. We need to dispel that myth and ensure that working class people actually have a fighter who will represent them instead of those that control a majority of our society who have gotten the priority for so long.